All right, so yeah, let's party. Okay, advocacy and policy. You're here for our advocacy work. Thank you so much for joining us. It's my passion, it's Nate's passion. I always joke that Sierra Club hired the least outdoorsy person they could have hired. I am finally a certified outings leader, but I am not an outdoor girl. So advocacy, lobbying is where my heart lies. So they hired me to yell at elected officials, not to walk around outside. So perhaps you're all feeling that, right? Like maybe you're here because you want to talk to the people in power and make change in the world. You're here for that part of Sierra Club's work. So our first screen here is just captures of our website so that you can go back and find most of what I'm going to be talking about today. So under the Our Work tab on our website, you're going to see our legislation section where we have our tracker, our scorecard, information about our every legislative session. We have the briefing series where our political and legislative director gives weekly updates, and then our volunteer lobbying program, all of which we're going to talk about today. And then the Clean Communities Project as well, we're going to talk about at the end. And then over on the other side, under the Get Involved tab, excuse me, you're going to see the chapter advocacy team, which is what we're going to look at first. Okay, chapter advocacy team, or CAT. And we have the cutest logo, I like to say. So chapter advocacy team, we are where we do that work of raising our voice to decision makers about state and federal policies and legislation. So if you are most interested in doing that federal work, the chapter advocacy team is where you would plug in. Because we really are doing both things at once. We're getting direction from both Jen, our legislative and political director, as well as the Climate Action Campaign, which is a broader federal coalition that we're a part of, and Sierra Club's federal policy team. So there's a lot of things happening within CAT. This is also the team in which we do a lot of our trainings. So we'll have workshops about advocacy, lobbying, outreach skills. We don't expect anyone to show up to CAT with any of these skills. We will teach these skills. We try and make things as easy as possible. If you join the chapter advocacy team, you'll get added to a Google group. Every 2 weeks or so, the Google group sends out Cat Tales, which is our newsletter that has action items in it. So really straightforward, like do this one, click this, do this thing, make this phone call, really straightforward actions that you can take on a regular basis that will have an impact. We're focused on things that make a difference. We don't do things that are, just for the sake of doing them, right? Like we're very, very focused on things that will make a difference, that have purpose and thought and strategy behind them. CAT is also where rapid response generally takes place. So when things are on fire, our CAT team members get on their phones and do the response for that. So text banking, we have text banking software. We regularly have trainings on that. It's fun and easy to do. That happens within CAT. Phone banking, action alerts. When Sierra Club, whether at the state level or federal level, needs to make, you probably get them in your email. So they're like, it says sign this, click through this, it puts in your information and it goes off into the nether. Those action alerts are always very intentionally planned. When we have them sent directly to your lawmakers, it's because they make a difference, right? So yes, lawmakers are getting maybe the same message because most of those are, if you look at them, it's the same message you're clicking through. But we do them when it matters about the volume that our lawmakers are getting. Or we do it as a petition. So maybe we're collecting your individual response and then we're sending it as an organization. We had 1,000 people fill this out. So CAT does a lot of work at promoting our action alerts, trying to, get those completed to the extent possible. We also do a lot of social media, but no pressure. I know that's not for everybody, but we're always looking for folks to network, share posts. It's the little things when you're working with social media, likes and shares sharing them to your network, sharing them to your page, make a difference in making sure that the algorithm shows our content. And unfortunately, that's the whole point of social media. Kat also has the opportunity to go to rallies and press conferences this past year. That photo down there on the end is from January. President Biden was visiting Emmaus, Pennsylvania, along with Representative Susan Wild, Governor Shapiro. So we kind of rallied our volunteers, went out and waved some signs about climate as he drove very rapidly fast and did probably not see them. But we at least had a presence there in a very oppositional environment generally. So, but sometimes you just got to show up. So we also attend press conferences. This past year, there was a whole series of electric vehicle transition press conferences across Pennsylvania. So we would have CAT team members go out and support those press conferences, those press events. CAT also works on basically collecting the public voice and making sure that it reaches decision makers. So what do I mean by that? Petition collection. I always get this question, like, you sign a petition, does that really make a difference? Does that go anywhere? When we're handing, tens of thousands of signatures to a lawmaker, it certainly does. So when we do petitions, we do them purposefully. It's not just like a fun thing to pass the time. We do it because they are going to be delivered to their target lawmakers or elected officials. Same thing with public comments. So maybe you've been following along the past couple of years that the Environmental Protection Agency has been releasing new rules. So the graphic there on the screen gives some examples. Carbon pollution standards, smog air quality standards, soot air quality. I'm not going to get into the details of those. But as those public comment periods opened around those rules, the public always has a chance to weigh in when government agencies issue new rules. We collected public comments and made sure that those comments got to the EPA so that the best possible rules were released and they were finalized before they would be at risk in the event that President Trump was elected. There are certain things, timelines that were in play where these rules would have been at more risk if they weren't finalized by a certain deadline. So our team mobilized to make sure that, along with teams across the country and other organizations, to make sure that these very important Environmental Protection Agency rules went into place. You can see the example down there at the end. 600,000 people submitted public comments for strong soot standards in March. That is a lot of public comments about something that's very technical and scientific. And generally, like your day-to-day life, like people aren't talking to you about soot standards, right? Like that's not a thing that comes up, but it can be a thing that comes up when you have everyone working towards that same objective. And our members also do public testimony. So sometimes some of these rules have the opportunity for people to give short, less than 5-minute virtual testimony about why the policy would impact them. So when that comes up, we provide training for how to be effective. We can even, we can review what you plan to say. You don't need to be an expert. That's the thing. All of these things come down to you don't need to be an expert. I'm not an expert on any of these things, but I can talk about myself, my story. You can talk about yourself or your story. And that is what has more of an impact. So that's our focus in CAT, is to really you can do it. You can show up at an EPA public testimony period, talk for a couple of minutes about how air quality impacts your life and your family. And that makes a major difference. And it's not that hard to do. A little scary, but not that hard to do. We will help you with that. I'm trying to, let's see, our other picture down here, that is a photo from when several of us in the coalition and our CAT volunteers went to the EPA Region 3 office in Philadelphia. I'm trying to think, sometime in the spring, and delivered thousands of petition signatures to the EPA directly and talk to them about what we were asking them to do. So I'm trying to, yep, and the other photo there is just of a postcard that we did. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity to collect public voices and make sure that they reach elected officials on this team. Letters to the editor. That is another major piece of our work in the chapter advocacy team. Um, if you're not familiar with LTEs, they're short messages that are submitted by newspaper readers to show how a community member views an issue. It could be in response to something that was written in the paper, an ongoing issue or crisis, anything that's newsworthy. Writing LTEs is a great way to share your insights, influence policymakers, and it's one of our most important advocacy tools. And the question is always like, but why? Because newspapers, younger folks probably maybe not getting the physical paper, right? Or maybe, they're getting their news from a whole myriad of sources. But everything points to the fact that newspaper, letter to the editors are still consumed by people. They still have a large online readership, even if people aren't getting it in print. Letters to the editor that are particularly good get cross-posted to other platforms. They get picked up by other media outlets. A lot of newspapers now are part of a conglomerate, so your letter may end up in multiple markets. It reaches a shared community space of which it's very rare to have these spaces anymore, right? Everyone is kind of in their own information bubble, looking for, the feedback from the choir that they already believe in, right? We're all just listening to what we already agree with. There aren't as many spaces where it's just the community talking to each other without an agenda. So you can actually get your content in front of an audience that otherwise wouldn't see it. I know my local letter to the editor pages sometimes have some drama and some really kooky things show up. So people tune in to read kind of the kookiness and then also get a bonus letter about, again, soot standards. They're going to read your letter because it's right there, right? Even if they weren't coming to that page for that. And decision makers are reading these. So elected officials and their staffs are looking at what shows up in the letters to the editor, especially if they haven't been hearing from their constituents. This is a space that they can look at to see what public opinion might be. So down on these slides in the corner, we have a full workshop about letters to the editor, how to write effective ones. We're going to be running these workshops again in the future, but you can watch the video if you want to learn more. If this is something you're interested in, chapter advocacy team is where we pitch these letters. We give you the ideas, we give you the talking points, and then all you have to do is infuse your personality into the letter. You don't need to do the research. We'll give you all of that. You're just connecting it to your life and why it matters to your community. All right, volunteer lobbying. I'm going to pause here. Okay, so by lobbying, we just mean talking to your elected official. It doesn't need to be you're visiting them in an office. That is what our photo is here. So that is Phyllis, one of our extraordinary volunteers in DC, talking to a lawmaker. But a lot of our visits take place virtually. They can also be at the local or state level, right? So it doesn't mean that you need to go to DC, although sometimes Sierra Club will pay for you to go to DC, and that's just a free trip so long as you do the work. But you can also visit in Harrisburg, or state officials have offices in your communities. So you might just be visiting them, somewhere nearby or doing it virtually. These efforts are housed within CAT. So again, if you're interested in talking to lawmakers, you're just going to be joining the chapter advocacy team. And we also don't expect you to jump right into these meetings. If you just are not comfortable yet talking to lawmakers, which totally respect, it can be intimidating. We're looking for folks to do research on legislators, especially if your lawmaker is newly elected. We are going to be looking for information about them. So you can contribute your skills to this type of effort by doing research into newly elected officials. Um, Gain lobbying skills. I talked about that. Sometimes this can just manifest as making a phone call, right? If you're comfortable just calling your lawmaker, you can deliver a lot of the same content. Writing to lawmakers, same thing. For all of these situations, whether you're writing, calling, or meeting with an elected official, we are going to give you all of the information you need. You don't need to be an expert. Much like the letters to the editor, you'll get talking points. You will get all the guidance you need. If this is the first time you're going to a meeting and you want backup, we'll come with, well, I don't want to say every single time we'll come with you, but depending on schedules and possibilities, there's a good chance that I myself or somebody else would be able to join you to help you out. One of our volunteer leaders who's experienced could possibly join you depending on where you're located. So we will help you at every step because we do know that it can be intimidating. Um, we track legislation. So if you just want to plug into what legislation we're tracking, the link to that is on there. Of course, this Pennsylvania session is over. So everything that ends at the end of this year, all of the legislation in that tracker dies, and new bills will be introduced in the new year. Pennsylvania has 2-year sessions. And so with that happening, our environmental scorecard is also updated. So you can click into that and see how your elected official is rated on environmental votes over the past 2 years if they're not newly elected. So that's just something for your reference. Again, we would guide you if you were on the team as to what we'd be advocating for. I am not going to show this video, but it is available on the slide deck. It's a 20-minute introductory training for volunteer lobbying from Jen Quinn, our legislative and political director. It is also on the webpage for volunteer lobbying, but I did want to share that resource if you wanted to jump right into that. The Google form image here is a link that you can click. So if you are interested in doing lobbying, the reason we have a separate form is because we would like to collect a little bit more information from you. We do need to know who represents you. So if you're not sure who your elected official is, you put your address in and then I can actually look it up. If you have existing relationships with elected officials, we want to know that. We want to know if you've lobbied before, what your experiences are, what training you need, and maybe what issues you're most passionate about. Because being able to be passionate about what you're talking about, if it directly impacts your life, is always just by virtue of the fact that we story tell about things that we are passionate about, will make you a better lobbyist. We also have reporting forms. These are optional. I don't want this to sound like I give you a bunch of homework if you sign up for this, but these are available for folks that like this type of structure. You can fill out an action plan, which is where you could ask for support. You could basically indicate what your plans are through that form. If you wanted to do state legislator research, right? If you do have a new lawmaker coming in, we have a form where you can send us that information that you learn. And then we have a debrief report. So if you do have an interaction with a lawmaker, you can use the form to put in the feedback about it so that we have your notes, right? Because it's important for us to know what took place in those meetings. Again, this is not an obligation. We also just talk, right? Kat has monthly meetings that are optional. We can talk there. We can always talk one-on-one. We can talk through email. I never want anyone to feel like they have to, pursue things in a specific way. Whatever is comfortable for you, I'm flexible with. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nate, who is going to talk about a different segment of our advocacy and policy work. So Nate, take it away.
All right, thank you. Yeah, and I'm going to be talking about the Community Advocates Program is what the National Sierra Club calls this program. So it's we'll say a larger overarching program, but we kind of branded it to create our own state-specific program. So we'll be hearing a little bit about that next. Next slide, please. All right, and I think most of us are probably aware, but there's a lot of federal money right now geared toward infrastructure and environmental and climate issues. One of the big acts or laws is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA, also called the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, BIL. So not only do you have the acronyms that you will hear just thrown around depending on who you talk to, but there's two acronyms meaning the same exact law for this one, which makes it a little bit confusing. But uh, overall, this is a really incredible opportunity. This law provided $1.2 trillion with an emphasis on transportation and infrastructure. And when you think transportation, think big picture. So it applies to everything from the electric vehicle charging network across the nation to clean ports, uh, rail, any type of mass or public transit. All that kind of stuff falls under, there are programs for those issues under this law. Next slide, please. And now we have the second really big one here is the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA. And this law resulted in well, you can see right there is more than 100 programs, which is pretty impressive already. Just thinking, a lot of time and effort goes into developing a program, whether it be a state program, federal program, what have you. So to think that one law resulted in over 100 programs with $369 billion, that again, that's pretty impressive, and it provides plenty of opportunity. And one thing to think about is that's federal. So how do we, so nationwide, how are we bringing that into Pennsylvania, which that was just a spoiler. You're going to hear more about that later. But some of the impacts here, we're cutting climate pollution. So the one goal is 40% by 2030. There's environmental justice goals. There's the Environmental Justice 40 is one of the provisions that a lot of these programs fall under, where at least, and I like to point that out as it's a minimum, at least 40% of the benefits must be realized by environmental justice communities. So another thing is that it creates jobs. So over 9 million family sustaining jobs. Just think about the amount of one, you have a strong economy when you have more jobs, right? Also, as we're trying to transition from, we'll say, fossil fuels to clean energy, the jobs created provides opportunity for fossil fuel, the people working in the fossil fuel industry to transition to clean energy, which I think is rather important. You can't ignore the fact that you have to have a transition of the workforce there. And again, we're addressing racial, economic, and environmental issues with this act. And it does have, especially when it comes to state programs. So this federal money going to the states are now responsible for tracking the impact that these programs have. So everything from the labor and the environmental standards, everything like that is tracked to show that this money is actually being used wisely and having the impact it was intended on having. Next slide, please. All right, and here's the important part. I noticed in the notes some people joined this call due to a recent election. And some of you may be wondering, well, why are we discussing this if the results of that election may put some of the future of this a little, maybe we'll say, in jeopardy? And I would look at it the other way. I would say right now, that means that we have a sense of urgency. To me, it's not whether you win or lose, it's how much positive impact you can fit into a short period of time. So let's empower right here. So we're trying to get grassroots volunteers. We're trying to get the actual people living in the communities to be active, to make their communities a better place. And this is a perfect example of an opportunity where you can take federal money and you can be active as an individual in a community and make a positive difference in your community with federal money because of these programs that exist now. So let's see here. I don't do a very good job of sticking with some of the slides. I apologize for that. So yes, activating Pennsylvania's across the state, advancing these programs, maximizing, I would say, maximizing the the impact these programs can have in Pennsylvania. Because if the money isn't coming to Pennsylvania, it's going to be spent somewhere, or it's going to go back to the feds, and who knows what happens when that expires. So the to me, the important thing is, let's make sure that we're actually taking advantage of this. Uh, and one way that I like to look at it is it's federal money, but federal money comes from local people. Everybody that pays taxes, that's where that federal money comes from. So some of that federal money is Pennsylvania money, right? The way, if you look at it that way. So it's basically bringing it back to the state. And with that last bullet there, we're looking at specifically schools and neighborhoods to have that local impact. Okay, next slide, please. All right, we have one of the components of the Community Advocates program is a Community Advocates for Clean Energy, and that's a very active, very well organized, we'll say region specific. It's southeastern Pennsylvania, and that effort is basically what I was just talking about, trying to uh, maximize and leverage the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law, making sure that the programs are administered correctly, at least according to our policies and priorities, and that as much money and impact is being seen within the southeastern Pennsylvania. And with that, well, right there, you can see, you can click on that for learn more and fill out a contact form. So if you live in one of those counties down in southeastern Pennsylvania, you click on that, and you'll get in touch with the people that are organizing the Community Advocates for Clean Energy. Next slide, please. All right, and now, just to show that we're not ignoring the rest of the state, we have the Clean Communities Project, and now this is not, we'll say, as well. It doesn't have the same, we'll say, focus. It doesn't have the same bandwidth in a way, I guess, if you want to put it that way, as the Community Advocates for Clean Energy down in southeastern Pennsylvania. This is a little bit more diffuse, and we're trying to focus specifically on a few programs where no matter who you are or where you live in Pennsylvania, you can try to be active and make an impact. So you can see here, it's right now broken up into the Clean Schools program or project, and that is the one that we're most active in right now. That's we'll say the ongoing effort that we're doing. We're also ready for the Clean Homes, especially when the Department of Environmental Protection moves forward with the home energy rebates programs. We'll be ready to act once that happens. And we also have we're prepared for addressing local government issues as well. But right now, the emphasis is definitely the priority is the clean schools. Next slide. And here's a good example of why. Pennsylvania has 500 school districts. And one way I like to think about this is, a lot of people think, well, oh, okay, I don't have children, so this doesn't matter to me. Well, if you pay local taxes, part of your local taxes go to a school district, and everybody lives within a school district boundaries. So you don't have to have children within a school in order to care about what's going on in these schools, and the impact that you could have at the school district level, and the impact that then the schools, the buildings, the transportation has on the community. So thinking from a community perspective, schools are a very very rewarding area to work with. And we really that bottom line there, we need as many people to help reach the school districts as possible. School districts don't typically move very quickly when it comes to stuff like this, so it may take multiple people contacting school districts or multiple attempts to reach out in order to make the progress that we're hoping to make. But next slide, please. All right, so the first step though is okay. I've decided I'm going to participate. I want to reach out and make a difference with the school district. Uh, I want to show the school district what opportunities they have because of these the Inflation Reduction Act, the bipartisan infrastructure law, as well as some state programs that we have that are geared towards schools. So great. Now we have a desire to act, but what do we do? Now here's a kind of a tricky part, but in a way it's not that tricky. It's you have to determine who you're going to reach out to. And part of this is, okay, who are the decision makers? So you can reach out to school board members, superintendents, assistant superintendents, principals. But another thing to think about is if you already have a contact, what I call a warm contact is somebody that you already have a working relationship with. Yeah, can sometimes be more effective than reaching out with trying to do a cold contact. Uh, the other thing to think about is that warm contact can maybe put you in touch with the person that is making the decisions, and having that middle person doing the introduction can sometimes facilitate that discussion. So there's no real wrong answer here. There are some important people because of their decision-making ability, but there's also the thought that if you already know somebody, you have some contact, reach out to that person. All right, next slide. And what we're doing is we're simply trying to educate school leaders of, hey, there's all these programs out here. You're basically it's you're missing out if you're not looking into what these programs are and what they can do for your school district and what they can do for the children that are going to that school. When it comes to, when you think about this, there's money savings, there's health, indoor air quality, there's air quality on buses, when the difference between a diesel bus and electric bus. So you think about all the benefits of this, and we wrapped it all up into a template letter for school districts. So you can click on that link, I think, right there, if that is a link, or maybe it's just underlined. But we do have a template letter that you can do a little bit of tailoring and send it to your school district, or go to find parents that you want to maybe, or that are willing to reach out to their school district. But again, there's no wrong way. You can do it yourself. You can find parents. You can do both. Send a letter yourself and find a parent that has a student enrolled that can send a letter in there.
It is a
Uh,
clickable link. I'm just going to jump in there and say that when you get the slides, you can click that link. Yes.
okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Uh, next, okay, here we go. So here are some approaches that volunteers have already used and that have been quite effective. Some of the these are, we'll say, the effective approaches that we've made note of through lessons learned and just experience. Speaking at school board meetings, they're open to the public, and one way to make sure you're heard is to show up. Uh, find out when the school board meetings are, call ahead of time, find out who to contact, get on the agenda if you can. If not, there's often just public comment periods where you can bring up the topic and then maybe get on an agenda for the next one to speak more in depth about this topic. The other one is to utilize parent-teacher organizations, parent-teacher associations. And there's an entire I guess we can call it a webinar. Anyhow, it's a video that really explains a lot of these programs that are geared toward school districts that can benefit the environment, human health, and cost savings within the district. So that video, I encourage everybody to check that out if you have any interest whatsoever. Really great video. And with that, I think we can go to the next slide. Yep. So right here, hopefully, I don't know. I'm hoping that I reached a few of you with saying this and going through this little chat. I'm hoping that maybe you're inspired and you want to be active in this. And if so, it's really easy. You sign up right there to get started, and next thing you know, you're gonna have somebody reach out to you to get you started. So that way, it's as easy as I think that it can possibly be. Uh, uh, Mostly because Melissa does a really great job with all that stuff, and it's a lot easier than what I envisioned it when I started working in this realm. So I would say, being a technology dinosaur myself, it's easy. Click that link, get started.